Okay, so please then to the next slide. My name is Pascale Leistra, and I'm working already for over 20 years on educational spaces. And those are from kindergartens, from primary schools, secondary schools, university buildings, and actually not only in the Netherlands, in Holland, but also abroad. Yes, please, the next slide. Three main topics I would like to discuss. Education changed, of course. I would like to talk a little bit about the history of the campus of TU Delft. It's dated back from 1842 until now, and all the changes which were embroidered. And I would like to address to modern education in historical buildings. Yes, please, the next. These photos, they seem very, very outdated. And of course, yes, they are. But in a way, they are only maybe 100 years old. And as you can see on the left and both on the right, teaching was for quite some time it was one directed. You had a teacher, a professor, and the students, they were, if everything was okay, listening very silently, and there was not a lot of dialogue, communication. So this remained for quite some time. Even in when I went to school, it was not really different from the image to the left. And okay, I must say university was a bit different than the picture on the right, but it was more or less the same. But then, yes, please, the next picture. So the way of learning is changing, as also our former speaker Tristan already mentioned, but actually there are things even more changing, and those ones are the changes in the world. So how can education adapt to these very fast, unpredictable changes of the world? We're talking about the pandemic, about the recent situation, about sustainability. I do have a very nice TED talk I saw from Obeng Smart, and he's talking about the world after midnight. It's really a recommendation. Yes, please. So what do we need to learn? Actually, it's all about 21st century skills. And it's not only learning from the books, it's about critical thinking, it's about communication, making social spaces, it's about collaboration, working peer-to-peer, it's about creativity. It's not one direction, and there are all kinds of ways how we can try to explore these skills best as possible. Agile way of working, personalized way of working, blended learning, peer-to-peer. We have Scrum methods, we have MOOC, we have all kinds of sources. Yes, please. Next. Okay, so all these different ways of educational learning methods, how should a building adapt to these ones? Yes, please. In a way, that would be great, no? Only having this blended learning with your device. But as Tristan already mentioned, after these 2 years of pandemic, everybody is longing to go back to the campus again. So this is one way, new way of learning, but let's go to the campus, to the physical spaces. And what does a building, an educational building, ask? Well, it definitely asks a diversity of spaces. And if we start from the bottom, we need spaces where you can be concentrated, where you can learn on high individual methods. I call the second way of learning water holes. Actually, those are the places for co-working. And then the third one, I call them the fireplaces, where you gather all together, where you come together. And those are actually the social spaces. Yes, please. So from this about 100 years ago classroom, there is this great example reference in Copenhagen. It's even a school without classrooms. So in this school on your right, it's from 3KN Architects. There are no classrooms, but there are all these different kinds of spaces, like these water holes, campfires, and caves. Yes, please. And the traditional lecture hall, there is a beautiful example in Delft Technical University. It's in the Pulse building, and you see that it's not at all this static way of environment, but it has become a highly dynamic environment. Yes, please. Okay, the second issue, the second topic. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Technical University of Delft, where I studied myself. Yes, please. I need to hurry up a little, but okay. Delft, it's a really small city. It has about 100,000 people, and 1/4 of them is students. Yes, please. Next. If I compare it to Munich, that's a bit different, as I read. It's 1.5 million citizens and about 100,000 students, sorry. Yes, please. The technical university dated in 1842, and it started in this building. Yes, please. So it was in the historical city center. You see the star, that's where it all started. And then in the 20s became the first extension of the campus. And in the 60s became an extra new extension. And then recently it's still extending, this Technical University of Delft. Yes, please. This is an example of the building of an extension in the 1920s, and you see a quite formal building, probably with a lot of small classrooms, offices. You see big courtyards to get daylight in. Yes, please. If I go back to the 60s, and this looks already again very old dated, but they made a really big extension of the campus, and they built all kind of separate buildings, as you can see them, each having its own department with a long lane for cars. And actually the beautiful building on the left was the aula of the TU Delft from Broek en Bakema, the UFO building. Okay, thank you. When I came in Delft in the 90s, it was no longer attractive. It was stony, there were too many cars, so they had to make a plan. Yes, please. They made a plan for a living campus. Okay, yes, please. And how did they do it? One of the first thing which was done in the late 90s was to make it a green campus. Yes, please. Actually, they added also a lot of social spaces. You know, of course, in Holland, and I think everywhere in Europe by now, bikes are very popular. But not only a storage for bikes has been made, but a coffee social point has been added. And you can see what happened. Yes, please. And it's not only the students who, and of course the staff who is at the campus, but a lot of companies, businesses are attending nowadays and have also their own spaces at the campus. Yes, please. And what I think is a really nice experience is to visit once the Science Center in Delft. It's students make all kind of these fancy, futuristic, how shall I say, cars, bikes, and other things. And visitors of citizens of Delft, children who attend workshops in this Science Center. Yes, please. And one thing what I thought is really a big deal is that not every university is working for its own, but lately the three universities of three different cities in Holland, Leiden, Delft and Rotterdam, are co-working. And actually they're forming, as I read in on the online, it's one of the largest medical hubs of Europe. Yes, please. Okay, then very briefly, I tell you that future learning spaces not necessarily need modern buildings. What happened in 2008 was the Faculty of Architecture burned down, and it was really a black day in a lot of lives of architects who has been there. Yeah. Um, as you can see, no renovation possible. Actually, the cause was a coffee machine. Okay, what to do? Then a team of architects came in May 2008. They thought, okay, we're gonna transform this building temporary into the new architectural faculty. But of course, what they saw, two little classrooms, two small rooms, no places for model rooms, no lecture spaces, no social spaces, a bad interior. But, yes, please? They had two splendid ideas. They made you don't see my course, they made two courtyards to get daylight in. They covered them. And one other thing is that they made a very much better wayfinding. Yes, please. This is a part of the wayfinding which was not imaginable before. Yes, please. And then the two main inventions were the covering of the courtyards. And in this case, you see the model workshop spaces. It's really a delightful place to work. Yes, please. And the one other one is the lecture room by NVADV architects. And also this one, it's a multifunctional super space to be. I would say come and look and join a lecture or anything over here. Yes, please. So my statement is we don't need necessarily new buildings, modern buildings, but also existing buildings can be perfectly transformed into spaces for future learning. Yes, please. And here you see some advantages about the renovation. Yes, please. Okay, my final slide. I think also as Tristan already mentioned, the build and building sector is responsible for almost 40% of total global CO2 emissions, carbon emissions. If we want to be completely CO2 neutral by 2050, we have to change course. And I think that's very important to have that one in mind. Thank you very much.